Tonight, Finance Minister finally agrees to take case of pensioners demanding complete exemption from debt exchange program to the president after he questioned why the retirees have been camping at his ministry for 8 days straight.
All government bonds will be honored, and that therefore, whether you are voluntary or not, whether you have tendered or not, it will be respected. So I really want to understand why we are still here.
The president is the final person to take these decisions. So we have laid our cards on the table.
Plus the curious case of how some persons were allowed to convert their bonds into treasury bills after the announcement of the debt exchange program. Who were those people and how much was involved? And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Another day, another protest at the Finance Ministry. And after 8 straight days, the Finance Minister is finally promising to take the case of individual pensioners, bondholders, to President Akufo-Addo himself. The pensioners have been demanding an absolute explicit exemption, and they've been backed heavily in an unprecedented move by immediate past Chief Justice Sophia Akufo. Today, for the second time in a week, Ken Ofori-Atta was compelled to descend from his office to meet them. He first questioned why the pensioners are still picketing at his office when he had assured them that their bonds will be honored in full when they are due.
All the pensioners, Sevi, because I issued, I had a press release a couple days ago, and I thought I had made it unequivocally clear that, all government bonds will be honored. And that, therefore, whether you are voluntary or not, whether you have tendered or not, it will be respected. So I really want to understand why we are still here, so that if there's anything more I can say, I can do that. But really, if you look at the press statement, it emphasized the fact that this was voluntary, and about 15-16% of the pensioners actually tendered, but they chose to. The bulk of you did not, but I had indicated that it was voluntary, which means that we will honor those payments. What I tried to do in giving you the option was that about almost 80% of you have bonds that go beyond 5 years, from 5 years going. And so in the new arrangement where I have brought everything down to below, from 5 years down, it makes it easier to get your lump sum money faster. That's your choice. It makes it easier. Anytime you are able to get your money ahead of time is good for you. But that's really your choice. And therefore, a lot of you decided not to take it. But that was really the basis of giving you the option. But if you chose not to take the option, we made it clear that we will honor those things. So really, there's no reason for us to be sitting here, because that assurance is been given on paper. So that's why I really want to talk with you guys to see what it is that you are afraid of or that you think will not happen. So my issue, which I told your leader, was that now you have very little of the old bond in the system, which means that in the event of a crisis personally, your ability to trade that paper in is really diminished. But that's a choice you make, that, I don't really care about that, I'll continue holding that. And we are saying if you continue holding that, fine, government would honor those papers. So I'm a little unclear, as to exactly what now the problem is. And I'm looking at the lady here because she keeps shaking her head. So maybe I'm not getting through, and I would like her to you. Yeah. I beg your pardon? Well, if the
Well, I would tell you pretty shortly what happened when subsequently the finance minister met with the bondholders privately after he had addressed them publicly. And today, as you may well know, Madam Sophia Kufu, who is a former Chief Justice, has in the last 1 week been to the premises of the finance ministry twice to join her colleagues who have been picketing there, demanding exemption from the debt exchange program. Well, my colleague Raymond Aqua has been speaking to her for Upfront, which will be played today, and she's been talking about what she makes of Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. This is Madam Sophia Kufu, the immediate past Chief Justice.
Became Minister of Finance in 2017. I heard him on the TV. He was talking, and he was saying that he sees his responsibility as being that of protecting the national coffers. Now, the promise and the achievement, the gap is too big, and I need more explanation. I think that's it. But all I know is that you were going to protect the national coffers, and they are now empty. Whether they were empty at that time or not is neither here nor there, because you were not going to be protecting the empty thing. You were going to protect it and make sure that everything that comes into it henceforth is going to be well husbanded. So it's been very disappointing. The fact is, whether it is Ken Ofori-Atta or if it was Mr.
It was Secretary before Ofori-Atta, yes.
If it was somebody else, it would still have been the same. I would still feel the same. As the person who's been given the responsibility to manage the economy, I don't think has done a good job.
Okay.
That's it.
Should he be removed?
Hey, as for that one, I'm not his appointer. The person who appoints,
if we're asked
is
to advise the president today, should he remove him?
I will ask him, why is he asking me?
Okay.
Well, she wants a reduction in the number of ministries.
I think so. I think there are many areas where there has not been much to show for. And therefore, somebody else should be asked to try it. And then there are some ministries that also need to go back to their former partners, because there are some ministries which were split up. I was explaining to my daughter that when I was growing up, there was Ministry of Transport and Communication. That was just what came into my mind. And transport included air, land, sea, you name it. Anything that is transportational, that was transport and communication. I think they were at that time even in charge of roads for a bit before they split off roads and highways and so on and so forth. But now we've taken everything apart, and minister of this, minister of that, minister of that, deputy minister of this, deputy minister of that, and I think we've come to the point where it's quite evident that indeed too many cooks do spoil the broth, because each one thinks the other one is doing what they should be doing, or everybody is getting into the other person's way, and turf wars and so on and so forth.
What would be an ideal number?
Oh, I'm not going to even venture to suggest a number.
And that's Madam Sophia Kufu, immediate past Chief Justice, in that interview with my colleague Raymond Aqua. The full interview is airing tonight at 6 p.m. It's on Upfront on the Joy News channel. It's going to be live on our many social media platforms as well. Just make a date at 6 p.m. on the Joy News channel, or just log on to our Facebook page and just watch that full interview with Madam Sophia Kufu, who, by the way, has joined the fight with the individual pensioner bondholders who today, beyond meeting the finance minister in the open on the premises, also managed to secure a private meeting with him. Dr. Edward Anienchi, he's a convener of the group, addressed journalists after that and told journalists that the finance minister has committed to take their case to the president himself.
He told us everything, all the things that you have been telling us, the difficulty, everything. So
the same English.
English. So the short tale is that we said we just want the exemption, using the word you have been exempted. So that is what the minister is going to work on now with higher authorities and come out with something for us to hear. Well, the president is the final person to take these decisions. So we have laid our cards on the table. The minister has tried to explain to us, but we said we don't see any difficulty. What is the difficulty the minister is facing? What is the difficulty this country will face when you say you have exempted pensioners from this exchange?
Has he given you any timeline on where to get back to you, and are you going to Parliament tomorrow?
Yeah, we are going to Parliament today, and I said we were going to help him to do the right thing in Parliament.
When will he come back with feedback from the president?
I can't tell, but according to him, by the time he appeared before Parliament, they might have resolved that issue.
So you are hopeful by tomorrow you'll get a pronouncement?
Yes, that's definitely, we are hoping for that.
Well, the finance minister is due in Parliament tomorrow to brief the nation on the debt exchange program. Already today, the individual pensioner bondholders, they have been to Parliament ahead of the finance minister. They've been meeting with the leadership of the House, including the Speaker as well. Parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante joins us on the telephone line right now. Kweku, what do we know transpired in that meeting with the minority leader and the Speaker?
Evans, as we speak, that meeting with the Speaker of Parliament has not ended, but that with the minority leader ended about 2 hours ago. Dr. Kisela Tufos, and as we understand, has been assuring the pension bondholders that the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, is expected to appear before MPs tomorrow, and they are going to fight for them. The specific concerns that they put out, they are going to put them to the finance minister tomorrow and ensure that the finance minister sticks to some of the commitments he has made and also make some fresh commitments. At the core of what these pensioner bondholders are demanding is a categorical public announcement of an exemption. The finance minister has so far been reticent, only today announcing that he is going to the president to put these concerns before him. But Parliament says that as the second arm of government, they are going to ensure that these matters having to do with the pensioners are dealt with. They sympathize with these pensioners and their concerns are valid and genuine. And that is the assurance that Dr. Kisela Tufos is giving Dr. Anane in that meeting, that information we've been getting. While that meeting of the Speaker is yet to be ended, if anything that the Speaker has said on the floor is anything to go by, he has also repeatedly expressed his concerns that people who are around his age are back on the streets protesting and demanding something as basic as exemption from this domestic debt exchange program. There are those who have expressed concerns that if this exemption is granted, it will not derail government's plan at getting an IMF deal. And so the Speaker himself is worried why the Speaker of Parliament is worried why the Finance Minister is not granting these concerns. And so that meeting, we understand, will end any moment from now. Ahead of that meeting, crucial briefing that Ken Ofori-Atta is expected to give MPs tomorrow.
And what form will this Ken Ofori-Atta briefing take tomorrow before Parliament?
So our understanding is that it's going to take the same form as the Finance Minister accounting to Parliament on the COVID-19 funds. About 2 meetings ago, some NDC MPs raised concerns about how government was expended COVID-19 funds. They put in a motion. At the time, the Deputy Speaker, Joseph Osei-Wusu, struck that out. But later, Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, granted them some window where Ken Ofori-Atta came in the form of a statement and presented some documents to Parliament. After that, MPs on both sides were able to comment and make some discussions on the specifics of the arrangement. But we know that some NDC MPs, particularly Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa and Honorable Mahama Yariga, are demanding that because the debt exchange program, in its legal sense, is like borrowing, it must come before Parliament for approval. And so when they do so tomorrow, they are expected to drum home that, and the Speaker may be invited to make a ruling on that concern.
Will
But
MPs get opportunity to ask a question?
Questions are not allowed, but the way MPs are normally doing, when statements, per the standing orders of Parliament, when statements are made, both sides can comment on it. You cannot ask questions for the Finance Minister to come and respond. So ultimately, members from both sides will make comments on the statement that the Finance Minister will give out, and then the Finance Minister may also be given a closing remark where he can come in and sum up his thoughts and use that opportunity to respond to some of the concerns that MPs would have expressed.
Quickly, thank you very much. And thankfully, I understand that Dr. Edouan Anointri may have just wrapped up his meeting with the Speaker and is on the line with us. Dr. Edouan Anointri, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you.
How did the meeting with the Speaker go?
Oh, very well.
Any assurances?
Yeah, that the Parliament will fight for what we are demanding.
They will assist in the fight.
Yes.
And you say you'll be in the House tomorrow yourself. Is it your expectation from your private meeting with the Finance Minister today that he will announce an exemption when he addressed Parliament for you?
Yes, that's what we believe. Because you have said there is no justification whatsoever holding on to this basic thing of exempting pensioners and allowing them to have some rest and leave the premises of the ministry. It's not a good thing to see. And the minister is saying he's going to have a discussion on that with the president. And by the time that he comes to Parliament or he goes to Parliament tomorrow, we'll hear a statement that will be made would reflect what the discussion or the decisions that will be taken by him after he has consulted or discussed with the president.
So as of tonight, you've recruited the Speaker into your corner as well?
Yes, because the Finance Minister is going to Parliament tomorrow. We felt we should brief the leadership of Parliament on the matter sufficiently. And so yesterday, we had a discussion with the majority leader. This afternoon, there was a discussion. That one, it was between myself and the minority leader. I didn't get the other people to join me because of the time that he called, that he was ready to let me in. But afterwards, that was around 2 o'clock. But we also had a meeting planned with the Speaker at 3. A delay. We have just finished with that meeting too.
Dr. Edouan Anointri, thank you very much. We wait to see what transpires tomorrow when the Finance Minister appears before Parliament. And tonight, indeed, there are more questions for the Finance Minister. Yesterday, as we've been digging into the many aspects of the debt exchange program, the Finance Ministry is facing more questions after it emerged some persons were allowed to convert their bonds into treasury bills after the announcement of the debt exchange program. The disclosure was contained in a Finance Ministry statement yesterday communicating the success of the debt exchange program. My colleague, data analyst Kofi Ajay, joins me live now with more. Kofi, yesterday we identified some discrepancies in the numbers. There was an attempt by the Finance Ministry to explain the gaps, right? Now, in paragraph 5, they admit the discrepancy and say, quote, "The outstanding principal amounts presented in this press release differ from the outstanding principal amounts in the exchange memorandum and have been adjusted to deduct A, amounts of eligible bonds held by persons that are not eligible holders and that were not eligible to participate in the exchange." And that is understandable because it includes the pension funds, although their bonds were eligible, though they themselves were not eligible to participate because they've been exempted. So that was accounted for. But it is the B that is raising a lot of questions tonight, which is that amounts held by persons following the announcement, amount held by persons that following the announcement of the exchange converted their eligible bonds to treasury bills. So the finance ministry itself is now disclosing to us that after they announced the debt exchange program, there was a group of people who managed to convert their bonds into treasury bills. Questions have been raised. How is that even possible? Because I'm a bondholder. If you told me there was a possibility that I could actually convert my bonds into treasury bills, goodness me, I'll snap off your hand.
Absolutely.
Because I'll want that. It's 35% plus up there. I'm escaping the haircut from, the debt exchange program, etc. I will do that conversion. But now there is this disclosure. Key questions: who are these people? How much was involved? We have been asking these questions. Bright Simmons, who is the honorary vice president of the think tank Imani Ghana, has also been looking into it and has written extensively about it. What are his own thoughts on this matter?
Well, Evan, first, Bright calls this the magic math of Ghana's debt games. And according to him, we have a lot of theories governing this whole, math that we're seeing. So the most concrete is that Bank of Ghana bought dollars from private sector through a swaps. So the banks covered by buying bonds, and the banks told Bank of Ghana that if they touch those bonds, the swaps will not be unraveled and BOG will not need to pay the dollars. So obviously BOG doesn't have the money to pay the swap. So, and then also there are also contractors holding bonds connected to some government liability exposures. So restructuring those bonds will amount to a double default. Now, Evans, Bright has also been saying that the truth is that if the treasury bills have lower maturity or higher interest, then these bonds or treasury swaps imply that an actual increase in government's domestic debt burden. So which is somewhat unacceptable.
They believe that's crazy.
Yeah,
but
crazy,
the fundamental point is there are real questions that the finance ministry must answer. Kofi, we noticed yesterday that the numbers were not exactly adding up. What did we observe?
So we've been looking at the numbers, and there are 3 bonds to exchange right now. First is the GOG bonds, second is ESLA, and the third is the Dachi bonds. And so for the GOG bond, at the initial stage, the original amount to be exchanged was 126 billion Ghana cedis. Just as of yesterday, when the finance minister presented the final, outcome of the exchange, this had reduced from 126 to 91 billion cedis. So we do not know where 34.6 billion cedis, which people are actually holding these bonds. ESLA bonds, initial amount was 8.4 billion cedis. At the final stage, we are looking at 4.8 billion cedis, 3.6 billion cedis short. Who are those holding these bonds? Dachi bonds, original amount was 2.8 billion cedis. Final stage, it was reduced from the 2.8 to 1.4 billion cedis, short of 1.4 billion cedis. So the total amount we are looking at is around 38.3 billion cedis. Okay. So huge that if you combine, individual bondholders and even pension funds, it's nowhere close to this amount.
And we're asking tonight those people who were allowed, and the explanation, if you spoke to the experts, that conversion from bonds to treasury bill could not have happened without the government's or the Bank of Ghana's consent and permission for that to happen. Could it be that the amounts that we are mentioning may be part of that number? We don't know. I mean, as of tonight, there are just so many questions that the finance ministry will need to provide.
Absolutely.
As far as that is concerned. Tonight.
What the Nigeria has done today is the best thing to do. There is nobody on earth that will be able to stop the legitimate Boku Naba from getting to Boku.
I expect everything to return to normalcy.
Government rejects newly skinned Boku chief and directs the arrest of anyone parading himself as such over fears the move could escalate tensions in a conflict-ravaged town. We have details of a statement as bipartisan group of MPs from the Upper East region also condemn the enskinment.
Such purported enskinment is null and void and will not be recognized by any institution. Pleasantly happy that they have issued a statement condemning the act. But that's not enough. It should go further than that and make sure that the fellow doesn't act as a chief.
Tonight, Attorney General defiant, insisting he has no intention of withdrawing his legal advice to the Auditor General, telling him not to publish audit reports before parliamentary probes following the scandalous revelations in the COVID-19 audit.
I think it's actually very much unjustified, unwarranted. Indeed, I've said for one to suggest that I ought to withdraw the letter that constitutionally I was mandated to write.
We have details as the Center for Democratic Development got it wrong. Also tonight, put the human being at the center of the anti-LGBTQ bill debate. That's the call from Archbishop of Canterbury as he meets with President Akufo-Addo.
Is to remember that when we talk about human sexuality, we're dealing with people, and they're people for whom Christ died, as for all of us.
So what's the President's response?
But the Parliament is in full grips with that. I will have my say on it at the end of the day.
In business,
January monthly inflation rate witnessed the lowest growth over the past year. But as inflation finally peaked, we get more answers from the government statistician.
And in sports, we hear from former Manchester City player Julian Lescott, who has been speaking exclusively to Joy Sports on how Ghana's Kamaldeen Suleiman can thrive in the English Premier League.
You want to join us for that and more? Plus your comments 055-1111-997. My name is Evans Mensah. We start tonight from Bawku, where government is tonight condemning the enskinment of a new Bawku chief today at Nalirigu in the northeast region amidst rising tensions in a conflict-ravaged town now of Bawku. Government says it only recognizes the Naba Asigri Abugrago Azoka II as the rightful chief of Bawku, and any other person holding himself as such must be arrested. The directive follows a ceremony this afternoon that saw the enskinment of Nasedu Abugri Kuluga II by the overlord of Mankrugu. Already, a bipartisan group of MPs from the Upper East region have also condemned the enskinment. We have more on that shortly. But first, amidst heavy security presence, the new chief called on the people of Bawku to end all hostilities and embrace peace. Elias Utanko filed this report.
The enskinment was done Thursday morning by the king of the Mamprugu traditional area of which Bawku is said to be part, now Bohago Abdullahi Mahamud Sherga, together with his royal court members. It started with the arrival of the families and sympathizers of the 4 Mamprugu Gate in Bawku. Soon, scores of people in around Nalirigu began to gather at the palace to witness the historic enskinment of a Bawku Naba by a Mamprugu overlord after nearly 40 years. However, while the processes were ongoing, members of the Northeast Regional Security Council led by the Regional Minister Yidana Zakari arrived at the palace in the company of heavily armed security forces. The presence of the Regional Minister briefly halted the process as the crowd erupted in opposition against his presence and demanded that he leave the place. After a brief opposition from the crowd, Mr. Yidana, following the intervention of the palace elders, was allowed to engage the overlord in a short private conversation. Whilst on his way out after the meeting with the overlord, the crowd began to hoot at him and his delegation. A palace elder later told Joy News that the minister had come to accompany the overlord to Accra upon the invitation of President Nana Akufo-Addo. The elder added that the overlord turned down the invitation and told the minister it was too late to stop the enskinment. The enskinment processes then resumed and soon ended with the announcement of Na Seydou Abagari with a chieftaincy titled Na Akuluga II as the new chief of the Bawku Paramount Skin. Speaking to Joy News, some of the residents believe this enskinment will ensure the return of peace in Bawku.
The ban has never solved any problem. Bans have killed many people. We have seen many deaths. We have seen many naming. We have seen many properties and lives destroyed. It has to stop.
There is nothing like a Supreme Court ruling. So indeed, what the Nigeria has done today is the best thing to do. Indeed, this is a stepping stone to a resolution of the conflict or crisis in Bawku. I would want to entreat politicians to respect the chieftaincy institution. So the government should rather pay attention or concentrate on how to ensure that lives and property are not lost there. But as for taking the chief home, in fact, the chief will soon be home. There is nobody on earth that will be able to stop the legitimate Bawku Naba from getting to Bawku.
I expect everything to return to normal as usual.
So everybody in Mampuru, Upper East, in Northeast, we are happy to see such a thing.
The new chief is a popular retired educationist whose grandfather was the 12th Bawku Naba. He was unanimously approved by the crowd as they burst into loud cheers amidst drumming and dancing. The new chief, Na Akuluga II, called for an end to all hostilities in Bawku.
Finally,
Ilyasu Tanko, reporting from Nalirgu for Joy News.
Well, tonight the government has issued a statement on the back of this scheme. My colleague, my senior Major Thompson, joins us in the studio with details of this. What does the statement say?
So, Evans, this is a very straightforward letter, strongly worded from the Ministry of Information, and I read verbatim. It says, the government condemns developments in Nalerigu today, February 15, 2023, concerning the purported enskinment of a new Boko Naba as illegal and a threat to national security. Government further reiterates that Naba Asikri Abu Grago Azoka II is the Boko Naba fully or duly gazetted and a member of the National and Upper East Regional Houses of Chiefs. The security agencies have therefore been directed to arrest and prosecute any other person who holds himself out as a Boko Naba. Further, any developments that have the potential to undermine the peace of Boko will also be dealt with swiftly and in accordance with the law, Evans.
Mami, thank you very much. A bipartisan group of MPs from the Upper East region in Parliament have also tonight condemned the rival chief. MPs say the purported enskinment is null and void and will not be recognized. Listen to MP Vozibela and former Majority Leader Cletus Avoka, who spoke on behalf of the group.
It has come to the attention of the members of Parliament from Boko Central, Zebila, Binduri, Pusiga, Mpane, and Garu, who include Honorables Mahma Ayaraga, Cletus Avoka, Abanga Abdullahi, Haji Ladi Ayi Ayamba, Lydia Lamisa Kamvareba, and Honorable Albert Akoko Alazuga, that the Nairi, Na Bohugu Mahami, Abdullah Sherga II has purported to enskin a rival chief for Boko. This is unacceptable and should not come from a person of his stature. Such purported enskinment is null and void and will not be recognized by any institution under the 1992 Constitution. The government of Ghana must take every step to ensure the maintenance of peace and security and hold perpetrators of this criminal act accountable. Meanwhile, the members of Parliament for the area call on the people of the Kusauk traditional area and its environs to remain calm and assure them that this unlawful conduct will not stand. We are watching closely the level of political will of the government of President Nana Akufo-Addo and Vice President Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia in respecting the Constitution of Ghana and the right of the Kusasi people to rule over their own land and to have their independence. The Zugrana Naba Asigri Abogorago Azoka II, who is the Boko Naba and president of the Kusa Traditional Council, remains the only recognized paramount chief of the Kusa Traditional Area as recognized by law. The conduct of the Nairi has the potential to aggravate the already precarious security situation in Boko, and this must be resisted.
Well, they want government to do more.
Yes, we are pleasantly happy that they have issued a statement condemning the act, but that's not enough. It is not enough to condemn the act. It should go further than that and make sure that the fellow doesn't act as a chief. That is important. Not words alone, but action by government. There cannot be a rival chief in Boko. There is one chief recognized by law, and that should be respected by everybody under this constitutional dispensation. So government should not just say that we condemn it, but make sure it doesn't work. No rival chief exists in Boko. That cannot be tolerated. I'm very surprised that this incident could not be nipped in the bud, that could have been prevented. We all know that prevention is better than cure. I think that they have enough intelligence on the ground to have informed government to avert this development. It is unfortunate that it wasn't averted, but we are still confident that the government of the day will make sure that there is no rival chief in Boko.
I want to bring in my correspondent, Ilyasu Tanko, who has been following this for us today. Ilyasu, I'm very curious. So this enskinment, was it done under police protection?
Well, the police or the security arrived at the time that preparations were about to start for the enskinment. In fact, the enskinment had already begun when the regional minister led another group of security forces to the area in attempt, as we understand, to stop this particular process. And so, indeed, the police, the security was there when this particular event or processes started. They were there from the beginning to the end.
And it went ahead peacefully. Hello, Liasu.
Hello, Evans.
It went ahead peacefully.
Yes, it did. Go well because and there was no event and nothing happened. The only time that the process was briefly erupted was when the regional minister came there, and the crowd that had gathered at the palace had to hoot at him, possibly for him to leave the place. And so that was the only time that they had a brief interruption of the process, but it resumed and went on successfully.
Thank you very much, Eliasu, for joining us with some clarity on that situation. I want to bring in security analyst Adam Bona, who follows this very closely. Mr. Bona, thank you for your time here on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me, Evan.
So we've seen the statement from the government, and I'm curious. Eliasu confirms that this enskinment, which the government now describes as illegitimate, and now has directed the arrest of this individual who has been enskinned, the border at the neighboring countries. The president, the commander-in-chief, President Akufo-Addo, is today expressing concern about the influx of refugees and the possibility that terrorists may take advantage of this to destabilize parts of the country that border these, the border towns. A recent strike on a terrorist hideout at border town Po near Ghana's Paga border generated concerns about the influx of refugees and consequences for Ghana. Listen to the president, who wants an immediate solution.
One of the biggest problems that we're having in Ghana today already, of course, is the issue of refugees. As a result of the dislocations that are taking place within the Sahel, we have, until recently, it was quite evident, people coming from Chad, littering our streets, young people, young children and women in very disastrous circumstances. We now have an influx of people from Burkina Faso as a result of the turbulence and insurgency that is going there. So we're very familiar with the issue of refugees and the need for us to, all of us, find a solution to stability and to good governance in these various countries. The idea that by 2050 there'll be 1.2 billion refugees in the world is an alarming prospect for all of us.
Well, we can hear from security analyst with the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, Professor Kwesi Enin, who says it's time now to end the rhetorics and take action.
There are no borders, apart from, from where Boko is, apart from Pusiga and Kulungungu, where you can see thousands of people coming in and out every day. If you take, Kulungungu, for example, they don't have the technical equipment, the scanners, to be able to scan any of these hundreds of 40-foot containers coming through, filled with bicycles, onions, spare parts, whatever you want to call it. So the rhetoric is fantastic about beefing up border security. The reality on the ground is that it doesn't exist.
And that's Professor Kwesi in there. I want to bring in the Executive Director of the Ghana Refugee Board. Joins us on the telephone line right now, Mr. Tetepadi. Thank you, sir, for your time here on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me around.
We just heard the president there, of course, obviously concerned about the influx of refugees. Do we have the exact numbers of how many people have crossed in to Ghana, Burkina Faso, and other neighboring, communities so far?
So for those who have come into Ghana, the Ghana Immigration Service has been recording the numbers, and we also registered over 1,000 people. But what the people on the ground tell us is that the Burkinabes move back and forth. As and when they feel the situation has calmed down, they go back. So there's a lot of movement across the border. So we don't. I'm currently in the region and with the UNHCR representative, and we have not seen large numbers, but we have seen the Burkinabes who have been here, who clearly need assistance, who clearly need help. The host communities have done a lot by absorbing them and catering for them and sharing their resources with them. But they clearly need some help, and we are stepping in.
The concern that has been expressed by the president and other security analysts is the possibility that people wanting to foment trouble may infiltrate. You're screening them and you're sifting those genuinely in as refugees and those who possibly may become threats.
Absolutely. That threat is real. It exists. But what the situation is that we are working very closely with the security agencies. We are not working in isolation. We don't have the expertise, but we're working very closely with the relevant agencies who are looking at the security side of things. And if they don't go in, we don't come in.
Thank you very much, Tetepadi. And Tetepadi is the Executive Director of the Ghana Refugee Board. Are you in any of these border towns? And have you seen anything? Please share with us here on Newsnight 055-11-11997. Attorney General Godfrey Adami is tonight sounding defiant, declaring he will not withdraw his legal advice to the Auditor General. He is now fighting back, saying those urging him to do so are advancing what he says is an absurd legal opinion. Dr. Dami had urged the Auditor General to unpublish his audit findings into the use of COVID-19 funds. He argued the report ought not be published till Parliament's Public Accounts Committee probes the matter. This view has since been flatly rejected by the Centre for Democratic Development, the opposition NDC, and chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. Now, they had all argued that the AG and asked him to withdraw the advice. Now, listen to Mr. Dami address the issue.
Actually, very much unjustified, unwarranted, and indeed absurd for one to suggest that I ought to withdraw the letter that constitutionally I was mandated to write. I stand by the contents of the press release today, and clearly you see the constitutional and statutory provisions that I advance in support of my position. It tells you that my position was justified in law, and on the contrary, the positions taken by some civil society members are clearly insupportable. I think that the call for me to withdraw an advice that I gave to the Auditor General in lawful exercise of my constitutional mandate under the 1992 Constitution, and I've referred to those provisions in the law, Article 189 of the Constitution, Article 295 of the Constitution, as well as the fundamental provision, Article 88 of the Constitution, which shows that indeed the Attorney General ought to be the legal advisor to the Audit Service, which is part of the Public Service of Ghana, and that's the Auditor General. He's also part of the Audit Service, which is also a member of the Public Service of Ghana. So clearly, I do not see how it can be contended that Attorney General cannot advise Auditor General. That is an absurdity of the highest standard, or standards, the highest order, and I think that it is unwarranted. Indeed, it will constitute a very dangerous precedent for this nation if the Audit Service were to be taken out of the public services listed in the Constitution. It is clearly listed in the Constitution, Article 190, as part of the Public Service of Ghana. So I think that the letter that I wrote clearly fortified by law, and I stand by the content of it.
On the substantive issue of the auditing process and the publication and Parliament, what do you think the procedure should actually be?
Well, I think the procedure has set out the Constitution that the Auditor General, upon the preparation of his report, is required to submit same to Parliament. Parliament is also required to debate same and refer to an appropriate committee of Parliament. So that process actually implies deliberation and scrutiny of the Auditor General's report. I think that it's very important to state that, yes, we're all building a nation, and the nation is governed by laws. The Auditor General, especially this current Auditor General, clearly has been up to the task. And I do not think that we ought to sensationalize the issues by this unwarranted perception that the Attorney General or any member of government is seeking to interfere with the functions of the Auditor General. The Auditor General is doing a good job, but of course in doing so, he must be guided by the Constitution and the laws of Ghana. And that is all I seek to do, that whatever he does, he must be guided by the Constitution and the laws of Ghana. We'll be collaborating on various issues. I am the first Attorney General to actually issue a writ in the High Court in Kumasi on trying to enforce a disallowance and surcharge issued by this current Auditor General. This current Auditor General issued some notice of surcharge and disallowance, and in December last year, Office of Attorney General in Kumasi filed a writ in Kumasi seeking to recover the amount that the Auditor General sought from the person in question. It's a matter of record. So we give him every support. But of course, I think that for the sake of order and good governance, there ought to be compliance with the Constitution, and that ought to be all under the law. No one's above the law.
Some have questioned the timing of the opinion. You're asking why now? Of the legal advice. Why now?
Why the COVID expenditure issue? Why the other reports that have been issued over the period?
Yes. So the fact that there is a repetition of unconstitutionality, any unconstitutionality, no matter the times it's repeated, does not ripen into legality or constitutionality. An unconstitutional conduct, however it is, when repeated so often, doesn't ripen the act into a conditionality. It doesn't change the nature of the act. If other Attorney General never wrote such a letter or never gave such an advice, I can afford it. I mean, I think in my time, this issue has arisen, and I thought that for the sake of the future, we must guide the work of the Auditor General properly. That is all.
Have you received a response from the Auditor General on this, and what do you expect him to do going forward?
I have not seen the response to the Auditor General. I don't know if you have seen the response to the
I
Auditor
haven't seen that. But do you expect him to comply? If he doesn't comply, what will you be doing?
I mean, I think these questions really seek to create some kind of conflict between the Attorney General and the Auditor General, and I will use this form answering it. Thank you.
And that is the Attorney General, Godfrey Ibadamina, interview with my colleague Joseph Akable. Still ahead here on Newsnight. Put the human being at the center of the anti-LGBTQ bill debate. That's the call from the Archbishop of Canterbury as he meets with President Akufo-Addo.
Is to remember that when we talk about human sexuality, we're dealing with people, and they're people for whom Christ died, as for all of us.
So what's the President's response?
But the Parliament is in full grace with that. I will have my say on it at the end of the day.
You want to stay with us for details of that and more after business. Hello, George.
Hi, Evans. And coming up in business, January monthly inflation witnessed the lowest growth over the past 1 year. But is it a sign that we have finally peaked with the rate? We hear from the government statistician and fetch hints of plans to further downgrade Ghana's credit ratings if the situation to worsen status if government fails to honor keep-on payments on maturing local bonds. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business, Allianz Life and Ghana Pay. You welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, the month-on-month inflation rate for January this year witnessed its lowest growth over the past 1 year. This was captured in the Consumer Price Index report issued by the Ghana Statistical Service today. There is more in this report.
The Ghana Statistical Service data showed that the monthly inflation rate for January stood at 1.7%. This is the lowest since January 2022. The Statistical Service data argue that the reduction in the rate can be largely linked to slowdown of non-food items over the past 1 month. It also maintained that the Ghana cedi's marginal stability over the past 1 month might have contributed to the slowdown in the inflation rate for the month of January. Based on the data, it appears the high prices of some imported items did not help Ghana's inflation dynamics, as inflation for imported items was 62.5%, while inflation for locally produced items was 50%. The Ghana Statistical Service was, however, quick to add that, despite the significant drop in the Producer Price Index last month, it might take some time before it impacted positively on national inflation rate numbers.
And that is a Business Desk report. But has inflation peaked? That's the question we posed to government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenin.
Given the reversal, one can argue that we've peaked, but one can also argue that it's a short-term peak or a long-term peak. And this is what we always need to be careful about. So we've seen a reversal at a point 54.1% and now 53.6%. A number of factors should be taken into consideration on the conversation on whether we've peaked or not. We've seen marginal increases in fuel prices until the last one that occurred in the month of the latter part of January. That possibly could feed into February. We are not too sure about how that is going to impact on it. We've seen changes in utilities that occurred in the first month of February, which one has to keep in mind on the conversation of whether we've peaked or not. And the third issue that we need to keep in mind are the high rates that we recorded in the year 2022. And this is what we refer to as the base drift effect.
And that is government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenin. Now, ratings agency Fitch has warned that it will not hesitate to downgrade Ghana's creditworthiness into worsening status in the coming month. That is, if government fails to honor the interest payments on bonds issued that had matured. It's coming after the Finance Ministry announced that it will honor these payments in line with government fiscal commitment, a move that the agency describes as worrying, on which they cut Ghana's creditworthiness to restricted default from CC due to the debt exchange program and the default made on some coupon payments that had matured. Meanwhile, economists with GCB Capital Courage Boti tells Joy Business this action by Fitch was expected.
Looks like it's not a doomsday thing if the IMF program starts, if government is able post EDP demonstrate that over the long term or demonstrate over their projections and then behaviors and actual fiscal performance, and the outlook suggests that we could be honoring those debts even in these new forms as they are, and it will not be facing some of the similar issues we face that led us to that some of these conversations. You can always get your ratings back, but on the basis of the fact that people are getting much less than what the initial terms of their bonds are. And especially, of course, this rating focused on just local currency debt, but similar thing was done when we suspended interest payment for external debts, really. I mean, it just tells you that we are giving the investors less than what they expected. And so those are, if you like, default situations, and that is why we are seeing the kind of ratings we are seeing.
Courage Boti is an economist with GCB Capital. Now, the Africa Center for Retirement Research has joined calls for pensioners to be exempted from the domestic debt exchange program. It's coming on the back of the continuous picketing at the Ministry of Finance by these pensioners. Now, this is despite the fact that the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, today claimed that a decision has been taken on these pensioners. Now, Abdullahi Mashood is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Retirement Research.
We are all in a queue on the timeline and will surely get to the retirement phase. We must all speak up for this vulnerable and voiceless group in government bonds. The Ministry of Finance must listen. The desperate decision to include pensioner bondholders in the debt exchange program is insensitive, not in line with best practices, and could greatly impact the debt statistics of the pensioner population. The discussion on involving pensioner bondholders in the program has given us a sense of the proportion of pensioners who invest in government bonds, and has brought up important questions about how survivors of deceased pensioners who invest in bonds get paid.
Abdullahi Mashood is the Executive Director for the African Center for Retirement Research. Executive Chairman of AIDC Digital, Ambrose Yan, has called on government to invest heavily in internet expansion and accessibility. He has been speaking at the launch of the first AEDC AI Center of Excellence in Accra.
As I've mentioned in my address, government is doing well, and several other countries. I think we listed about 6 countries that have invested very well in ICT development in terms of infrastructure. So once we have the infrastructure and there's connectivity, so access becomes more widespread. So we need to increase the numbers so that more people can get access to internet, so that they can have the applications ultimately become beneficial to them. For me, going forward, the challenge is illiteracy, because everything is hinged on technology now going forward. Otherwise, in some years to come, all companies or individuals who have refused to move along with technology will find it very difficult to operate.
Ambrose Yan is the chairman of AIDEC Digital. Now, Vanguard Assurance has launched its same-day claim reload initiative to give customers claims below 10,000 Ghana cedis access to their claims on the same day after filing for payment of their claims, according to the head of distribution at Vanguard Assurance, Samuel assuming the initiative is introduced to cushion citizens in these tough times.
We've reloaded our same-day claim payment, where we are telling the public that any of our customers who is involved in a motor accident and the cost of repairing the vehicle, if it is 10,000 and below, once you bring the needed documentation within that same day, 24-hour period, before 3 p.m., we will pay the claim. So we also mentioned that there's no need for most of our clients to be walking into our various offices to process their claims, but they can do that online.
And that is Samuel Esumi. He is the head of distribution at Vanguard Assurance. And that's all for Business on Newsnight.
George, thank you very much. And you are live on Newsnight. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. A few of your messages on our WhatsApp console. This one from Sena in Agonu. It says AG must allow Auditor General to do the work for a better Ghana. He says, and this one from Edem Kojo, he says, I hope the difference bond amounts to the total of bond maturing in 2023, which could be a provision for settlement as detailed in the 2023 budget. If not, then an investigation must be conducted as soon as possible. Just two of your comments there on the stories we've done so far. Now, Parliament will soon start the consideration of the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill. The private members' motion, sponsored by the members of Parliament for Pram Sam George and others, proposes to introduce wide-ranging restrictions on LGBTQ plus rights when passed. Human rights activists have kicked against some portions of the provisions in this particular bill. Last night at the Jubilee House, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Portal Welby, appealed to the country to put the human being at the center of the debate.
I suppose the most sensitive within the Anglican Communion has been that around human sexuality and identity. That has been a very difficult issue, as I'm sure you are aware. There are radically different views on this around the world, and it is an area in which many countries try to enforce their view on others. What we are trying to do in the Anglican Communion, you'll hear many stories, is to remember that when we talk about human sexuality, we're dealing with people. And they're people for whom Christ died, as for all of us. And therefore we seek to find a way forward in which every human being, regardless of any other factors, may know that they are loved by Jesus Christ and has an opportunity to find the salvation which comes from Christ. That is the position of the Church of England. I know it's a very hot topic in Ghana. I will go nowhere near telling you what to do. I have a lot of trouble telling anyone what to do. A plea for the recognition that behind these issues are always human beings.
Well, President Akufo-Addo wants a balanced strike between the cultural norms of the country and the rights of individuals.
We can sympathize with very much. The issue of human sexuality and identity is today a very current issue, a very live issue here in Ghana. It has even produced legislation, a private member's legislation in the House, which the Parliament is grappling with. The consequences, hopefully, will be ones that will recognize the culture and the societal attitudes, but at the same time recognize the humanity of all people involved, and hopefully the law that will be fashioned will be a law that enables this balance to be carefully struck. But the Parliament is in full grip with that. I will have my say on it at the end of the day, but for the time being, we will leave it to the Parliament to.
You're still live here on Newsnight on Joy 99.7 FM. This is a big night when it comes to football. There is that, I call it the title decider in the Premier League that is waiting all of us at 8 p.m. And then there is the Champions League. Big games also tonight. When do you get titanic clashes all in one night? It's happening tonight, and Ms. Bao is here. I'm pretty sure, Ms. Bao, you have something to tell us, an update.
Yeah, absolutely. That big game between Arsenal and Manchester City coming up pretty shortly in some 45 minutes' time. But former Manchester City player Julian Lescott, he came to Ghana as part of Manchester City's water project, Xylem water project, which they are embarking in Cape Coast in the central region of Ghana, and he spoke exclusively to Joy Sport on Kamal Dean's big money move to Southampton, and he says the player has all it takes to thrive in the English Premier League. He says Southampton are a team that are noted for building and developing talent, and he's confident that Kamal Dean Suleiman will grow at Southampton.
It is tough. There'll be an expectation, but I'm sure the expectation the club and everyone else puts on him won't be the same as he puts on himself. I'm sure he expects to do well and hopes to do well, so hopefully that is the case for him. And it's not a short-term project. They haven't signed him just for the last 6 months of this season. The model that Southampton are using is similar to the one of Dortmund in regards to trying to recruit younger players, to trying to develop them. So I'm sure that's the case with him, and I'm sure he just wants to play. The opportunity to play in the Premier League, regardless of who it's for, is a big opportunity for everyone. So hopefully he does well and shines a great light on the Ghanaian football.
So Julian Lescott, the two-time Premier League winner and former Manchester City player, spoke to my colleague Misha Quaino there. Well, Evans, like you mentioned, the Premier League commentary, Champions League commentary continues tonight on Joe 99.7 FM at 8 p.m.
Which games are those?
I mean, Chelsea and Dortmund.
Woo.
Big game in Germany.
Hot.
Live commentary here. Fento Tahir and Gary Alsmith will bring you.
What time does it start though?
8 p.m.
Same time as the Man City versus Arsenal.
Yeah.
Oh goodness!
So you're gonna be watching this a bit
God.
and watching this a bit. Yeah,
how am I gonna do it? But look, so here's the thing: I'm gonna listen to commentary on radio.
Okay.
And I'm gonna watch muted the television.
Man City Arsenal. It's a big game. It's a big game, you know.
Yeah.
But Arsenal, they're carrying form. It's difficult.
We'll see. We'll see. Thank you very much, I'm grateful for that update. And listen, I quickly want to update you. And then tomorrow we are counting down to the finance minister appearing before Parliament to update the House on the domestic debt exchange program. And I'm sure you've heard as we've been talking about the developing story all day. The finance minister meeting with the individual pensioners, bond holders, and assuring them that he will be taking their case to the president and may announce an exemption for them tomorrow when he appears before Parliament. The man who filed the request for the finance minister to come before Parliament joins us on the telephone line right now. Is Samuel Kudjeto Ablakwa, MP for Norton, is on the line with us. Mr. Ablakwa, thank you for time here on Newsnight.
Always a pleasure, Evans.
So your expectations tomorrow when the finance minister comes before you?
I expect that the finance minister will be candid, will be transparent, he will be very sincere. I expect him to present a comprehensive and very factual account of this whole domestic debt exchange program. I am also expecting the finance minister to come clean on a number of discrepancies. When you look at the statement he issued on the 5th of December 2022, he said that the domestic exchange will be an exchange of some 137 billion bonds, domestic bonds, which includes ESLA, Dachi bonds, and new bonds issued by the Republic. You compare that statement to what he issued yesterday, and the numbers are not adding up. They claim that more than 84% of bondholders have signed up. With that figure, 83 billion Ghana cedis. They are not adding up. So we would need to understand exactly what has gone on. We are also concerned that it appears that some opaque window was created for some shadowy bondholders to, as it were, do a quick transfer into the treasury bill market. How come that was not announced, that was not known by anybody, and others appear to have enjoyed a preferential treatment? That discrimination, what explains that? Then we are also interested in why we are here. Why should we be here in the first place? Why has the finance minister brought all of this untold hardship, this excruciating pain, where we have senior citizens now picketing the Ministry of Finance, where we have all of this anxiety, the collapse of this economy, the unsustainable debt, which he was benefiting from. His bank, Data Bank, was at the center of really profiting from our miseries. So we expect him to be very transparent, to come clean, and to do an impartial diagnosis of why we are here and what measures he will be putting in place to ensure that we never return to this terrible place we find ourselves. So, the expectations that we have.
Samuel Kudedabraka, thank you very much. And it's going to be live on the Joy News channel, live also on Joy 99.7 FM and across our many social media platforms. And now let's talk about the classroom project, because some 700 school children are risking their lives daily, sitting in weak school structures just to access education, having told the tragic story of the 7 kindergarten children who lost their lives in Bremen, Jamra 6 years ago. We here at the Multimedia Group Limited have decided that we will not sit back for that to happen again. And yes, that's why we here are asking you to make a contribution to complete the school for these children so it doesn't happen again. Listen to one of the children affected.
It is dangerous for us to learn. When the rain enter the classroom will be very dirty here. So we don't want this class again. We want a new one. We please them to help us this new building so that we can live comfortably in that new room.
When it is raining, our ceiling will be removing. The water will be coming inside this room. So we don't want this class again. We want a new one. We feel shaking when the rain is falling. We feel shaking. We fear that the building will break in. We are begging them to come and help us to build the building.
You want to contribute and make a donation, the Momo number is 05930388832 and the account name is Multimedia Group Limited. The number again is 05930388832. If you want to send to a bank account, is Access Bank account number 00901010549191. The branch code is 009 and the SWIFT code is ABNGGHAC, all capitals. Enjoy the rest of the evening.